Welcome to the Half Yard Line. I'm Tim.
I am Luke.
And Luke, we have eclipsed week 10 in the NFL season. Double digits in the books. On to the part of the season that really, you make or break, right? A lot of teams in it. A lot of teams feel like they're in it. A lot of teams feel like they might be in it. A lot of teams who thought they might sneak in it also kind of having reality checks a little bit this week.
Yeah, this is the time of the year where preseason expectations are kind of fully in the rearview mirror because reality has bitten. Now, in some cases, it's a pleasant surprise. In the case of some teams, in others, it's unpleasant surprises. So the rubber meeting the road as we enter into kind of the latter third of the season. For those listening and wondering why we don't talk about Monday Night Football this week, just for some administrative reasons. We are recording this before Monday Night Football on this
behind the scenes.
So if we don't delve too much into Bills Broncos, that's why. Although frankly, why would we? In the first place,
I'm going to go ahead and say the Bills are going to win that game, and I'm going to say Russell
prediction.
Wilson throws at least two. Well, I won't say throws. I will say Russell Wilson has at least two back-breaking turnovers, be they interceptions or strip sacks.
Well, you heard it here first, and on today's pod, we are going to, in fact, do a sort of whip round, whistle-stop tour of the NFL because we've spoken last week in great detail about our favorite downtrodden franchises, the teams that can't catch a break. For the reality checks for those teams seem to come every year, and it's always bad. But what's been interesting, I think, this year is a lot of complaints from, NFL Twitter, NFL watchers. There's a lot of bad games.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bad games. Scoring is down. A lot of, especially primetime games that are kind of uninteresting, even on paper. I feel like we don't see that many that you think this early in the season, you go, well, it's kind of meaningless. Last night was Jets Raiders on Sunday Night Football, two teams that are kind of stuck in neutral at best. This season, I feel like there's been a lot of those types of affairs, even going back to like week 6, week 7, it's been a bit of a constant theme over the course of this year. And we were thinking about why that might be the case. So what we're going to do is go team by team and say, right, who's actually trying to win right now? Like who actually wants to win games?
Yeah, no, on any given Sunday, of course, every team's trying to win, but which organizations believe this is our year?
Our time is now.
Who are we evaluating? You think about the Titans right now. Certainly they like to win, but they really want to know is, do they have a quarterback?
It's not the priority necessarily, although obviously everyone wants to win and so on. So we're going to do a whip round of all 32 and kind of get a status check on where they are. Some of these are going to be fairly straightforward. Some of these will be more detailed as we debate and discuss. Before we get into all of that stuff, we encourage you, as always, to follow us on the socials at Half Yard Line Pod. Wherever you do social media, you'll find us. If you're watching us on YouTube, we salute you. And you can hit the subscribe button below. It's also a notification bell. Hit that. You won't miss any videos. You can email us, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com if you are still that way inclined, although I'm sure very few people voluntarily send emails outside of a work environment these days. I know I certainly don't. But that said, we'd encourage you to do so. If you're listening to us on a podcast app, find us on the podcast app, hit subscribe, hit like, leave us a rating and a review. Always super helpful for us. So many thanks for those.
Please.
Thank you who do that and those of you who already have. But as mentioned, no time like the present to kick off, Tim. As you said, now we're through 10 weeks, mostly. The NFL is kind of fallen into more of a recognizable pattern of the good, the bad, the ugly. We're just going to go team to team and discuss kind of where everyone's at, who's trying to win, who's in that kind of transitional year. And I think there's some teams that maybe are falling kind of in the middle of what I'm going to dub for the purposes of this podcast, Nowheresville is my
Nowheresville.
Nowheresville population, these teams.
Is that the capital of Nowhere Land?
Nowhere State. There's where the state capitol building is in Nowhere. So there's a few of those too. So why don't we start, Tim, with the AFC East?
Okay.
We'll start in the AFC, our preferred. Actually, before that, even we get into any kind of general thoughts on the state of play across the NFL in terms of this transition versus win now mode, because I certainly feel like that's changed, philosophically for a lot of teams over the last couple of years.
I feel like the NFL was the last sport to kind of get here. Certainly for all of time, there has been teams who were ready to win in the current year, going to win the Super Bowl, trying to win the Super Bowl, and teams who were still trying to win a game, right? Playoffs? We're going to play playoffs. We're going to win a game.
That's a good impression.
There's, something to that. But recently, I feel like NFL teams have picked up on that. NBA, MLB, no one watches hockey, view of, well, okay, this isn't our year. Maybe we should trade away our star talent. Think about what the Commanders did. They had built that defense around 2 edge rushers who have been good the entire time they've been in DC, and both got shipped away at the deadline. And in the NFL, we talked about it last year on the trade deadline special, was never a big trade league. There were always a couple of trades, but it was never anybody notable. Yeah, no one made deadline deals to make a run. Like, this is our year. We're going to mortgage our future to go make a run this year. It was always build for the long term, build through the draft. Free agency in the summer was always fun, though frankly, it didn't work for very many teams. The teams that were really successful were the teams that built through the draft, who did it the old-fashioned way, and built sustainable programs. And you've seen more and more of, and I would like to say it started with the Rams. That may not be fair. Maybe it started with, it certainly didn't start with the Patriots, right? I mean, they did it the old-fashioned way, if anyone ever did. But this idea that, all right, if it's not our year, let's take the guys we're not going to sign. I mean, even the Steelers, trading away Claypool last year, which turned out to be a great thing, but that's not a very Steeler move. Ditch a guy. I mean, we don't sign him. We don't trade him either. We run him to the end of their contract, and then
it's a year early versus a year late, right? That's what Belichick always used to say. Better do it early before the guy kind of takes a downturn in his production or in his health or anything like that. But you are right. You're certainly seeing more trades. I think it's good for the league. I mean, it makes it more fun, more entertaining, almost brings a fantasy football-ish vibe to the whole thing. Oh, think about the Christian McCaffrey trade last year, which obviously transformed the Niners' prospects for the season. That's a little bit more fun just for the soap opera that is the NFL. So I think it's good for the league on that basis. And I think what's interesting is you now have a bunch of teams that are saying, right, we can win the Super Bowl right now, or at least if you're not right at the top, there's a chance we could make a kind of miracle run. Get in the playoffs, see what happens. You think about my Titans in 2019-20, that's what they did.
What's that record for you right now? If I feel like I'm one of those, is that 6-3, 6-4? Is that
you're probably wins? 5? You got to think probably 500 or better, right? At this stage, maybe if you're 4-5, you could make a real push. But the Giants won 2 Super Bowls, coming from obscurity, just get in the tournament, see what happens. So there's some teams that probably feel
chipping a chair, baby, chipping a chair.
Exactly. So there's some teams like that who probably feel that way. But then there's also, I think, now become a realization. It's certainly become more quarterback driven in terms of the outlook on organizations has basically become, do you have a quarterback or do you not?
Or don't you? Yeah.
And that's always been the case to a greater or lesser extent. There's been exceptions. But teams are now actively saying, right, screw it. If we don't have one, the likelihood of us winning is so low that we're going to trade stuff away. We're going to find someone who can play, even if it's a Geno Smith level, someone who can give us enough. And then we'll go and find the next guy. And teams take swings on the next guy. And if that doesn't work, they go to the next guy. Think about the Cardinals.
The next guy.
Picks. Yeah, first-round picks on the
back-to-back years.
Back-to-back years. Yeah. So it's really become about that. And teams are accelerating the transition into the next era by trading away, current stuff for future stuff and making it a little bit more, like you say, NBA-ish, baseball-ish in terms of how teams are constructed. So I think that's definitely a valid point and has been borne out the last couple of years. So with that being said, let's swivel to the
pivot
Eastern Seaboard and the AFC East, Tim, the opposite coast to where you are right now, whereas I am situated there still. And we'll start with the Dolphins, who sit atop the AFC 6-3. They're on bye this week.
Clearly.
As my fantasy team will tell you. But yes.
Yeah, mine too.
Nothing too crazy. And they're kind of example. We won't get into this for every team, but they're on that. The other thing we should probably mention in terms of structure is it's the rookie quarterback contract is now that's the golden goose of the NFL, right? You've got a good quarterback who's on a cheap deal and you can plow resources into everyone else. The Dolphins obviously acquired Tyreek Hill, brought in Bradley Chubb. These are moves that you make when you think, right, we can maximize every other part of the roster, and the quarterback is good enough to get us there. Whether that's Tua, whether that's Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson before he signed his monster deal, Jalen Hurts before he signed his deal. These are the kind of, that's the team construct that I think everyone's kind of after. And the Dolphins are in that position, and they all win now. I don't know if there's anything controversial about that.
No, I don't think there's anything controversial about that, though. I do think there's a podcast in the efficacy of this rookie quarterback contract win the Super Bowl strategy, and how many teams have tried it versus how many teams are successful at it, whether or not it's really the golden goose everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, certainly if you're a GM, I think that's what everyone wants to do. But maybe
it's the strategy right now. It'd be interesting whether it's a good one or not.
Yeah, so the Dolphins win now. The Bills are second in this division, 6-3 right now, playing tonight. Sean McDermott has put together a very competitive bunch. They're obviously for the basically duration of his tenure. They're a win now team. The Josh Allen window remains open. The Diggs window remains open. They've done stuff like add Von Miller. This is a team that wants to win right now. I don't think, again, that's much discussion needed there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they've been in win now mode for a bit. I think they're actually, if you think about like the life cycle of a win now football team, right? There's this is our year. We're going to go spend a bunch of money in free agency. We're going to trade our draft picks. We're going to invest in today at the expense of the future. They're starting to roll into that future bit, right?
Yeah.
Where we mortgage that future. We're now there. That bill's coming due. You've talked forever how that team has one playmaker, and Gabe Davis wasn't it. And you think about the guys that they've had there, who just haven't gotten it done. And I think this is sort of what happens when you go win now mode but didn't win. And you think about the opportunities that they had, that unbelievable AFC Championship game with Kansas City that went back and forth and forth and back and forth and 40 points in the last 2 minutes or whatever it was, but they lost. And when that happens, it's so hard to go back, and the amount of effort, energy, luck, talent it takes to get back to that spot. A lot of times you see teams who don't get that second chance. And I wonder if the Bills, who would have thought that the Bills would be sitting second in that division, 5-4, hovering around 500 with losses to, the Jets. That was not how I had their season playing out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a team which is trying to win now. And to your point, I wonder how much longer they can kind of be as currently constructed and keep trying. I mean, Dalton Kincaid's shown some stuff. Maybe he can become that kind of second playmaker, if you will. But for now, they're still in that bucket. The Jets, 4-5, coming off the loss in the spectacularly kind of uninteresting week 10 game against the Raiders or Sunday Night Football. I feel like that. I mean, they kind of are win now for this year. They were supposed to be, but I'm thinking post Aaron Rodgers injury, they kind of are still win now. They're playing hard. They're trying to make up for the fact that Zach Wilson's not very good. But they're in what I would call the kind of nightmare scenario, which is you went all in, you pushed your chips to the middle of the table, acquired Aaron Rodgers, gave him all the money, brought in his pals to play with
your
him.
Opponent hit Trips Aces,
yeah, and exactly, and then he's out for the season. So you've got a team which literally needs to win this year or next year, pretty much. And the guy that you're relying on to do that isn't going to play. You would think.
No, and the guy who you have sitting behind him, you had no faith in, right or wrong, right? I think one of the biggest challenges if you're a Zach Wilson is this team paid $200 million so that I wouldn't play football.
Yeah,
it's a tough mental headspace to come in and be the guy. Now, obviously, he wasn't the guy before that happened either. But yeah, tough spot for them. They're clearly in win now mode, and they didn't throw in the towel when Rodgers went down. To the credit of the organization, I guess. But they didn't say, okay, well, clearly we're going to lose 17 games this season or 15 games this season.
Flush it.
Let's go ahead and get us a good little draft pick. So, I think interesting that it didn't work this season. Win now is a window. It's not a year. And hopefully if you're a Jets fan, 2024 expands that window. I had them at 4 wins, by the way. They've already gotten that number. Be interesting to see if they get any more the rest of the way.
Yeah. For sure, and I think Salah's doing a good job keeping that group competitive. We'll see if they can keep
How long that
trucking
lasts.
away because it's very, very narrow path to victory every single week. But yeah, they'll win now, but they're just kind of trapped in a horrible nightmare, which is very appropriate for a downtrodden franchise index stalwart like the Jets. Bottom of this division, New England. This is my first stop in Nowheresville. Tim, I don't know if you agree. They're 2-8. They just lost again in an absolute snoozer in Frankfurt, Germany, or ein Snoozer, as I think you would say in German. They
Okay.
I think they win now because I don't think Bill Belichick has any other mindset in terms of what he would like to do. He would like them to be win now, and I think their acquisitions of late don't speak to a team going, "Hey, we'll punt." They bring back the old Patriots. Is what he's done time and time and time again. Right? Guy leaves, signs a big deal, flames out, bring him back. Whether that's a coach like Bill O'Brien, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, whether that's a player, they brought J.C. Jackson back. They've brought Trent Brown back.
You left Josh McDaniels off that list.
Yeah, well, he may yet return
twice
to the saddle.
It's coming.
But the reality is, I think even before the season, and you may disagree on this, I kind of felt like this was going to be a transition year. It's really a Mac Jones final throw of the dice, swing of the bat, whatever you want to call it, year for them. And if he's good, you're going to go somewhere. And if he's not, it's time to flush it and move on to the next guy. I mean, McCorkle has thrown 10 interceptions this year, including, I think, a candidate for worst throw of the NFL season. Yesterday against the Falcons, the back foot red zone goal line interception to Gesicki, which was like, I don't even know. As Ricky Waters once said, for who, for what, Tim? For
what
who
were you trying to do?
For what? So the Patriots are in Nowheresville. It's not really a team that is in any way set up to compete, but I don't know if Belichick can adjust to that. And I think the interesting note here is, we spoke about it before, what's next? Because I feel like next is coming pretty soon. Who's the next coach going to be? How are you going to move forward in the organization? I think one way or another, we're coming to the close of the unbelievably successful, unprecedented window that Belichick has opened for this team. But I have them in Nowheresville, so not really a team that's in win now mode, especially not 2-8.
No, listen, you can't call them win now, to your point, because they're not winning. Or even particularly competitive.
It's literally half the phrase, so you do need to.
But at the same time, they're not playing like a team in transition. They're not running their organization like a team in transition. And just as a sidebar, very quickly on Bill Belichick, because I think it's worth doing. A lot of the fire bill is starting to be a thing, and not just because it's been a great career. It's time to hang it up. I mean, he's 71 years old. Everybody would like to tell you not the oldest coach in the NFL.
It's not the oldest coach in the NFL, Tim.
No, and you know who is? Luke. They don't ever talk about it.
No, they never mention. I don't. Is it Sean McVay? I think he's the oldest.
No, it is not Sean McVay. A little north of there. Close though.
Peter Carroll, I believe, is it not?
Yeah, he's like 87 years old, but he's still.
Yeah. But Tim, he loves football. You would never know it looking at him on the sideline, as every announcer has said since the beginning.
Anyone who's covered his game ever. Sorry,
we get it.
Luke and I don't like the coverage of Pete Carroll being old but spry, born
Just
in
stop saying it.
51 at
That's all I'm asking.
ripe old age of 72. A whole 1 year older than Bill Belichick, though, to be fair. Bill Belichick looks like he could be his father. In any case, point is, Bill 71. How many 70-year-olds can really coach NFL teams? I don't know. But here's the question I have for you. Not will they fire him, won't they fire him? Will he resign, won't he resign? The question is, does Bill Belichick ever coach a team that's not in New England going forward? Because I've seen a whole lot of articles popping up on landing spots for Bill. And
It's a tough one. I think.
You hiring him? I'm not hiring him.
Yeah. I do think would be a very downtrodden franchisey thing to do. Hire the best coach of all time and make a complete hash of it. Yes. The Jets would have been my number one choice in this scenario because it feels very Jetsy to do. But obviously, he's already resigned once as the HC.
Yeah, I was about to say, NYJ. I can't imagine. No more HYC or NYC.
I think someone probably would, just because the track record is just unparalleled. But it does raise an interesting point, and maybe we can sidebar quickly on this, because we're speaking a little bit about coaches today and kind of where they're at. The other issue that Belichick faces is he's a kind of an anomaly now, or not a relic, but the defensive head coach is just way out of vogue. Now, DeMeco Ryan's doing great things in Houston, striking a blow for defensive coaches everywhere. My Titans have Vrabel, he's a defensive head coach. The problem that they face, whether it's Bill Belichick or anybody else, is everyone wants to hire an offensive-minded coach. Offensive coordinators get poached more often to be head coaches than defensive guys do, or special teams guys in the rare cases like a Tomlin or a John Harbaugh. You have to basically reset every couple of years on the offensive side of the ball.
Yep.
And you have to hire a new guy all the time. And it's so hard. If you're DeMeco Ryans right now, Bobby Slowick doing a phenomenal job coaching the offense of the Houston Texans, everyone would agree. However, what's happened? His name's coming up as a head coaching candidate. So then whether it's this year or next year, you would imagine if they continues, he's gone. So then when he goes, you have to replace him with someone else. And then if he's successful, you got to replace him with someone else. Titans have had this exact problem. You had Matt LaFleur come in. He got hired away by the Packers. You had Arthur Smith come in, did well. He got hired away by the Falcons. Then you're hiring another guy. So how often can you continually reset and reset and reset? And if you have an offensive head coach, you don't have to do this because you just keep the guy and no one really hires your DC away that often. I mean, it's happened to the Niners with Ryans, obviously.
It happened more 10 years ago
than it does now. It used to happen a lot more than it does now. So I think in terms of the question around Belichick being hired somewhere else, he falls into that bucket too. How many teams are going to hire a defensive coach? I think someone probably would. And I think he is so bloody minded that I can't see him not coaching a team. He'll probably go and coach a high school team or something because he's that kind of guy. But yeah, I think the list of people who would be suitors for him or any other defensive head coach of high renown is probably a lot lower than we would imagine it would be just because of the way that the league is trended.
Yeah. And listen, this isn't a coaching podcast. But I do think, obviously, where Belichick lands or doesn't land is an interesting story just based on the last quarter century of football in the NFL. I tend to think he's done, and I don't know what motivates him right now. I don't think he's motivated to rebuild a team, which is why I think they've been so bad at doing it. I think he was motivated at some level to get the wins record, though that's looking like a 5-year goal at this point at the rate they're winning.
It's going to be tough.
And would he go somewhere that, I don't know, it felt like they were a coach away? Who's that?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he was traded for when the Patriots acquired him, right? So
yeah.
That was.
Listen, it's not
unusual,
impossible.
But
it's not impossible. But I think as great as he's been, his shtick has always been my way or the highway. It's so hard to get players to adapt to that, especially if you just got canned. So
yeah,
I just don't know that he resonates anymore. But listen, we wasted all of our time from the AFC West while we were talking about Bill Belichick and the AFC East. So let's maybe tick those 4 real quick because I think they're easy.
Yes.
What do you think about our friends in Kansas City?
Yeah, no, rebuilding. Team's terrible.
Clearly.
No chance of doing anything. No.
Wasted all their money on a big quarterback contract.
Yeah, he sucks. Fire Andy Reid. No. Chiefs are win right now. And will be for as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing football. So get used to that if you're not used to it already.
Easy number 2, the Denver Broncos. What would you say?
Nowheresville, Tim.
Nowheresville is exactly
Nowheresville.
Right. Failed win now, right? This is the word quarterback away. Right. So they go get their quarterback. They steal a quarterback from Seattle to let Russ cook, open up the offense like the spry Pete Carroll never would. Oops, that doesn't seem to have worked out too well.
Yeah, I mean, unless they pull something miraculous out of the bag at 3-5, I can't really.
Minus 54 on the points differential. I wonder how it got so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they lost 70-20.
Didn't help. I think the thing with them is they're not going to the quarterback and the coach can't survive this happening, both of them, and the coach got there more recently, so I'm inclined to think the coach has got.
Yeah, but the quarterback's got more money on his head, man.
Yeah, but Peyton's also got some crazy contract, right? That
they both do. Yeah, it's wild.
So no, Broncos are in Nowheresville. Failed win now. They're going to need a transition year next year or the year after, Frank, regardless of what happens for the rest of this year. But yeah, a failure on the win now stakes, and now every time you see them pop up on a primetime game, you think, oh, geez, are we going to have to watch this? We are.
Yes, we are.
Third up, Tim, a team that you just saw live and in full effect at SoFi Stadium, hat on head, the I need to say San Diego Chargers. God, that's an anachronism now, isn't it?
It's been a while. Yeah.
The Los Angeles Superchargers, who are 4-5,
Yes.
lost another Chargers-y lose game where they score 100 million points. I think I read that they scored a touchdown on each of their last 5 drives and gained at least 75 yards on each of the last 5 drives to score those touchdowns, and they still lost. So
Yeah.
their win now, in my book, I don't think they're going to win right now. But the reason I would say, and this is the first of these, there'll be a couple of others, they'll win now because if they don't win now, Brandon Staley is going to get fired. So he has to win right now. The way the roster's constructed, they've got the rookie, the sunlit uplands of the rookie contract quarterback. They've added lots. They've got a lot of veterans on this team. You think about, Derwin James, Austin Eckler, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen. This is a team of vets with a rookie QB, which is what you're supposed to do. And Herbert's been all that and a bag of potato chips, and they are still not going anywhere. So I have them win now. You're at SoFi. You saw it. Any kind of general thoughts on the Chargers?
I have to tell you, it's
a
really interesting team. And I got to say, if you've not been to SoFi Stadium, just go. Any game, any two teams, buy a hat, be done with it. The building is incredible. Listen, I'm not a big architecture guy. I've never been to a dome stadium that felt more outside. Like there's a whole lot of open the windows thing. I mean, this doesn't have walls. It just has a ceiling. It's really, really wild. The building is gorgeous. I have never seen more indoor spaces in a stadium. There were 80,000 people there yesterday. You never felt crowd. I mean, it was wild. The seats are amazing. The building is amazing. The fans could use a lecture in how to cheer for a football team. Though when the Chargers started scoring, the Chargers fans woke up a little bit. The Lions fans traveled en masse. There were tons of Lions fans, which is true every week. The Chargers play at home, which makes it challenging for them. But yeah, no, I mean the team. Herbert looked good. Allen looks good. Got a couple of tight ends who look good, who no one talks about. It's a franchise that you look on paper and you go, they ought to be winning. But you said that for the last 20 years about the Chargers. I mean, it's from the day they drafted Phillip Rivers, you thought this team's gonna win a Super Bowl. It's just which one.
And
they
had Breeze before that, who was no slouch, right? He was very good when he was there too before he got hurt.
So you just kind of go, how is it exactly that we're here 20 years on and they haven't won one or come particularly close? I don't know, but yes, definitely structured to win now as they have been for ages, but they have not made it come off. One more team in that division, another one that has relocated recently, the Las Vegas now Raiders. Your take on Vegas's? Does picking up Jimmy Garoppolo in the offseason make you a win now football team?
Well, they're now in transition. I think this is the first example of this we've seen. Well, apart from maybe the Patriots that we already mentioned, you wanted to win right now because again, McDaniels had to win right now because they were not very good last year, having taken a step back post the whole Gruden, debacle. Adding Jimmy G just said we need to win now. They got rid of Derek Carr. You wouldn't have signed Jimmy Garoppolo if you weren't trying to at least do something. They didn't draft a high quarterback. They didn't try and acquire a young quarterback. So it was win right now. Obviously, that's all out the window. Again, you've got quite a veteran group. They spent the last few years acquiring Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Chandler Jones, which obviously didn't pan out, and they
were win now last year.
Yeah. But now with Antonio Pierce coming in as the interim, they're a transition team. Now it's just you evaluate the whole roster. Who can you build around? The quarterback's not on the roster. All due respect to Aiden O'Connell, they need to work that out. They need to work out who the coach is going to be. Yeah, they probably took a stab at win now, and now it's just pure transition for the Raiders out there in Vegas. The next division, Tim, I think we can I've got them all in the same bucket, which is your division, the AFC North. I have Ravens win now, Steelers win now, Browns win now, Bengals win now. Any thoughts on any of those 4 teams? I think it's all pretty obvious.
I want 30 seconds, and that is
absolutely.
The Steelers are not a win now football team. They are a transitionary football team who is hanging on by their skin of their teeth in every game, and their record makes them look more win now than they are. You're talking about a team with a rookie quarterback who's averaging like 7 inches per drop back.
Did you see his passing chart from the game that you won against the Packers yesterday? It was, if you haven't seen it, go check out Next Gen Stats. Look at Kenny Pickett's passing chart from yesterday. It's mind-boggling to think that you won that game. But
Won the game.
won the game.
And,
Winning football, Tim. Wins are a QB
hey,
stat,
you
etc.
play to win the game.
You're all over the coach impressions today.
They're not structured like a win now team, right? They're not going out and buying the one piece that they need. They're very much building through the draft and picking up free agents in sort of weighty spots, particularly in the veteran kind of middle of the defense, trying to hold that thing together. But I mean, the defense has given up tons of yards. The offense is not gaining any yards, been outgained by historical levels. Yet at the end of two out of 3 weeks, 6-3 now, they are coming out with more points than the other team, which says everything about, as Mike Tomlin would say, the weighty downs.
Downs.
I would also argue that the Browns and Bengals and Ravens are inexplicably in the win now seat. The Ravens have been there since Lamar's MVP season. The Bengals since Joe Burrow came back from his ACL and was still good. And the Browns since they spent $250 million on Deshaun Watson to varying degrees of success. Though as much as we crap on Cleveland and their Deshaun Watson contract, they're not the ones who are tripping around 500 this year out in Cincinnati. Burrow's back and healthy, and they're still losing, folks.
Yeah.
And
it's also not great when you start by losing games. That's why you don't want to start seasons badly, right? Because it's narrows your path.
Amplifies all your mistakes later. And Cleveland, beating Baltimore yesterday was the cherry on top of what was a fantastic football day for me. Luke, you and I have many conversations to have about that. But it was a good football day of the Ingle household. Steelers stealing a win, as we seem to do frequently this year, and Baltimore handing one to the Cleveland Browns.
Although it did seem like that we were going to get a perfect Browns thing. They scored a touchdown to get it to 31-30 and then missed the extra point.
Point?
Of course you did. I feel like the Browns have lost more games on like missed extra points or short field goals than anyone else in like NFL history. But
I don't have the stats on that, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised. Them and the Chargers.
Yeah, true. So to pivot away from the win nowiest possibly division in the whole league, probably the win nowiest, to the least, I would say, win nowiest division, the AFC South, where my Titans reside. Jags are in a win now situation. I think anything else needs to be said around that. Similar to the Dolphins, add a bunch of expensive guys around T-Law, although did get an ass whipping on the weekend that was. So interesting to see where they go from here. But they're definitely in a win now mode. So no problems there. The Titans at the bottom of this division, 3-6. This is another failed win now, right? Preseason,
what is it? Did you guys ever really go all in?
Well, I think the addition of like Hopkins, for example, kind of speaks to we need to win now. It felt like we're going to give it one more go with the group that brought us success, and then we will shuffle off into the Will Levis era. But I don't think Vrabel is the transitional type. Regardless,
I have to disagree with you on this one. I think Vrabel is a build forever guy. I think he's a constant transition guy, and in that, I think he's never win now in the true. In the same way, Tomlin, and I don't think the Steelers are win now, and not just because they're bad. That's just not how he builds teams. I mean, you guys brought in, Julio Jones, but you traded away AJ Brown. You have brought in Hopkins, but you're letting guys go at the same time, right? It's I'm going to build the team with players I think I can acquire at what I think is a value and who are going to add value to the organization. I'm not going to go out and overpay a wide receiver who may be better, but is going to handicap the team long term if things don't work out. Drafting the rookie quarterback high doesn't speak win now to me. I think this is a team that maybe we thought was good enough to be win now last year through week 9. But I think it's a team that was very self-aware about where they were and put safeguards in place that says, if this is not the season, we got our rookie. If this is not the season, we're not wallowing away or killing ourselves paying wide receivers $35 million a year, as good as AJ Brown is. So I would argue that if you guys stick with and let Vrabel do his thing, he's going to be a build for the long-term guy sort of for his career. And if this season isn't working out, always kind of, all right, well, plan B is we pivot to let's develop the new guy.
Well, I think it's interesting with the Titans because it's not that common to have a coach straddle two general managers. You know, you have a lot of general managers straddle two coaches,
right?
because this
Normally
is the old
GMs
guy.
get their guy,
Yeah, and then I bring my guy in. So obviously John Robinson was more of a win. I thought was going to be more of a win now GM, and he kind of was in the majority of his time. The AJ Brown fiasco was his doing, and Vrabel was definitely against it. Anyone who's paid even a modicum of attention to the Titans would know that.
Can you imply I've not paid a modicum of attention to the Titans?
Yeah, I'm just reminding people that there is a team in Nashville if they're not sure. And now you've got Rand Carthon coming in, and I think
next week.
Ostensibly he's a hire where you think, yeah, we're kind of pivoting into a new era. You know, you trade up to acquire Levis. Again, that says we're trying to move forward. I just think Vrabel has, because, you know, he's not a Belichick tree guy because he never coached under him, but Patriot way is give us the best chance to win this week. That's all it's about. It's a week to week.
You're not
he's
wrong.
A week to week coach. He can't, and I think he certainly outwardly, and he gives the least interesting press conferences in the NFL, so take of it what you will, gives the impression of it's just about Sunday. We need to win on Sunday. We need to, if we lost, we need to play better, coach better. That's it. So I don't think Vrabel has necessarily shown, and he's at least not outwardly, and maybe this is just his persona because he's a locker room guy, he was a player and all that, that kind of, he hasn't projected that kind of long-term thinking where I say, well, the priority is really now, let's get Will Levis comfortable. I think now, to your point, choosing to start Will Levis and announce him as the starter, not Tannehill, even when he's healthy, certainly points to, right, we're moving forward. And I think there's some self-preservation in that as well, right? If you're Mike Vrabel and you go back to Ryan Tannehill, who he loves, and the team stinks, you are going to draw the ire of, you know, probably most of the organization and certainly the fans. So I think there's some self-preservation in there. All of that is to say, whether you think the Titans were in win now before the season, which I think they were, just also product of not being in a very good division, think we can get in the postseason, we can make a run, or not, they're certainly in transition now. Rookie quarterback starting. This year's just about, can we get Will Levis comfortable so that next year he can take that next leap forward and we can compete quicker than maybe we think. The Colts, they're a transition team, and they're kind of stuck because Richardson's injured. So the whole point of having a transition year is you can evaluate, and they can't evaluate.
Sort of the other kind of, so like the Jets were at
right, it's the opposite
the
side of the
injury
coin,
took away the win now season. For the Colts, it kind of took away the transition season. Do we have a thing or do we not have? I don't know. We're almost in transition again next year because we got to see how Richardson comes back.
I will say, much as I hate doing this, got to give a lot of credit. The quietest kind of impressive season I would say in the league so far is probably the Colts. You know, everyone's been falling over themselves about Houston, which is completely fair. Colts are 500
pretty good
without the quarterback who's meant to save the day. So props to Shane Steichen doing a good job in Indianapolis, although I hope the Colts crash and burn and fail forever. Now that brings us on to the Texans, Tim. I'd say the core celebre of the NFL right now. Won again. CJ Stroud did crazy stuff again.
CJ Stroud doing CJ Stroud things.
They, to me, are in the perfect... They're a transition team, right? I don't think anyone's debating that. But they're in the perfect position. It's a transition year.
They're about to be a win now team.
But we're actually quite good.
Yeah.
So there's no pressure on the organization. There's no pressure on the coach to win right now. There's no pressure on the GM or the quarterback to do stuff
But there
today.
will be in 2024.
But the year's already a win, right? Even if they lost every single game from here to the end of the season, you'd come away going, CJ Stroud is definitely it. And there's stuff to work on. The offense is not that, you know, skill position players, improve the defense, offensive line, whatever you want to improve on. But that's the golden situation if you're a transition team, which is we're transitioning, but we're actually not bad. So they're in a great spot. Transition team, though, you would say the Texans. I'm sure you would.
Oh, agree. I mean, I have to be. I mean, anytime you use your first pick and a high one on a quarterback, you're a team in transition. But I think they change very, very quickly. I think you talk about that rookie contract. How long do you have that rookie quarterback contract? The Texans are going to be very active in the free agents market. You're going to see them target a couple of special playmakers, I would guess, on the outside and attempt to give CJ Stroud as many weapons as they can. And take a team that was reasonably productive under, the Deshaun Watson era and even a bit before that, and has had a lean season to poor here in the middle. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of how that evolves. But yeah, you know, they're a team in transition this year, but next year, watch out because I think you'll see teams are not interested in being good 5 years from now. I think if you see your opportunity, you find your guy, you capitalize, and you do so today, Junior.
Although watch out for offensive coordinator gets hired away and suddenly the offense doesn't look anywhere near as good as we said earlier this year.
Yeah, but you're still going to try it.
We are. We very much are if we are Houston. And we
All
are
right,
going
so
to
we did the
quickly pit
NFC
stop
or
in
AFC.
Houston. Well,
Ooh.
no, Tim, before we move on.
Whoa, I forgot.
We have, of course, the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week
Player
teaspoon
of
to
the
hand
week.
out.
Yes, sir.
Now we have a lot to get through this week, so it's going to be a little bit more of a quickie one this week. But the Texans currently have the teaspoon in the facility. Dario Gumbawale with his field goal heroics.
He can hand it over. We don't have to ship it this week.
Can hand over this week, Tim. How about Noah Brown, wide receiver, Texans, the Jonas Gray Player of the Week? For those unfamiliar, as always, player who comes kind of out of nowhere to have amazing performance. Never maybe heard of this guy. Comes from obscurity. Jonas
Often
Gray,
right back into obscurity.
Yeah, Jonas Gray, the exemplar of this. We hope all Jonas Gray Memorial Players of the Week go on to Hall of Fame careers. Noah Brown, Tim, a name that people are probably familiar with, right? Largely because the Cowboys are always on TV, and he played for them for a while. He's actually from Mount Olive Township, New Jersey, so the tri-state area is where he's originally from.
Not far.
He was obviously, as every NFL player is, a very good high school athlete. He was all New Jersey, which apparently is a thing, in the Newark Star Ledger as a senior. 21 touchdowns his senior year, which is not bad. And he went to Ohio State, OHIO.
IO. Oh, you didn't. Come on, man.
Sorry.
I'd have gotten it.
I'm sorry. But yeah, standing at 6'2", 215, wasn't a bomb-burning college career for Noah Brown. Nope. He played a decent amount. Ohio State, especially lately, has had an unbelievably good track record of producing wide receivers. Noah Brown not usually thrown into that bucket with the Chris Olaves of the world, but he certainly was productive enough to get an invite to the NFL Combine. So he did something right when he was out there in Columbus. He had some injuries when he was in college, broke his leg. So he was supposed to start and he broke his leg. That's not going to help you in your production.
Being
stakes.
Injured is not helpful.
Yeah, although he did have 4
touchdowns. They say the best ability is, Luke.
It's availability, Tim.
That's right.
Availability. But yeah, he forewent. What's the past tense of forego? Forewent.
You're right.
His final 2 years of eligibility to go to the pros. And to the pros he went, Tim. Went to the Combine. I know 4.5 40-yard dash, which for a guy who's only 215 pounds doesn't usually augur well in the NFL ranks. But that said, did enough and signed. Sorry, not signed. He was drafted, Tim. Drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. 239th overall in 2020.
So they didn't pick him early, is what you're saying.
Yeah, 7th
They had some other guys on the priority list above him.
Wasn't even the first wide receiver that they drafted. They drafted Ryan Switzer, Steelers legend, before him.
Legend.
There were 32 wide receivers taken in the 2017 NFL draft. He was the 31st.
Ooh, who came behind him, Anybody?
That's a good question. It's a guy called something. I will look it up for you.
We'll look up something. I didn't know if it was popped off. Happened to be Randy Moss or something.
It's not Randy Moss. It's Malachi Dupree.
Yeah, of course.
From LSU,
everyone knows Malachi. Great.
Went to the Packers.
Oh, but yes, I knew that. Of course, I knew that.
There you go. By the way, last overall pick in that draft was Chad Kelly. Do you remember Chad Kelly? The Mr. Irrelevant who had some interesting off-the-field stuff. Was also a non-NFL pro football player of some note, I believe. It's up to USFL, I think he played, not the XFL. Anyway, It's not about Chad Kelly. It's about Noah Brown. So he signed with the Cowboys. People remember he would play sparingly. He'd come up. He was one of those quintessential Troy Aikman. The coaching staff tells me they love this guy, guys. Like he'd make 2 catches every 3 games, and Troy Aikman would bang on about how the Cowboys brain trust. They love this guy. Great play. All the
next
time.
Steve Young, this guy.
Yeah, I mean,
wide receiver.
Yeah, Jerry Rice. So Noah Brown, he'd pop up. He'd have a good game here or there. He was actually with the Cowboys for a long time. I mean, for a guy who was drafted in the 7th round to make the roster is pretty hard. I mean, he latched as the 5th wide receiver, played some special teams, did the usual route. But he was there from 2017 to 2022. So 5 seasons. Again, we spoke about with Ogunbowale. If you're a late draft pick or an undrafted free agent, if you can get to 4 years in the NFL, if you can get to like the pension line, right, in terms of benefits accrued after you retire, you're doing something right. So kudos to him. Signed a 1-year deal with the Texans in the off season, and not really probably expected to do that much. Now, obviously, CJ Stroud being all world certainly helps. But the last 2 games, so The last two games, Noah Brown, he could have won this last week, but we gave it to Agumbawale for kicking a field goal. Last week, he had 6 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown. This week, Noah Brown, 7 catches, 172 yards in the win.
Almost
Another
200
narrow
yards
win
a
for the
game.
Texans.
You know,
So
and
in the
there's
last
lots
2
of
weeks,
players do that.
in the last 2 weeks, he's got 320 receiving yards, 325 receiving yards and a touchdown, which by my calculations, Tim, is good.
Yes, yeah, it is up there with the really goods even.
And considering his entire career, including these 2 games, he only has 1,400 yards. So you're contributing a fairly substantial number of those in the last 2 games.
A fifth of your yards have come in the 2 games.
Guys just suddenly come to life. It reminds me a little bit, Tim, this is a name blast from the past. Do you remember Drew Bennett, who played for the Titans?
Of course I remember Drew Bennett.
Who once had a 2-game stretch where he received like it was like 500 yards or something in 2 games. It was just one of those weird flash in the pan kind of things. He would have won a Jonas Gray Memorial Teaspoon.
We could almost now we could have a multi-week award named after Drew Bennett.
Yeah, maybe we could. We could look into that one.
Yeah, all right. So this is Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week, and then we could have the Drew Bennett Memorial Player of 2 weeks.
Because you did it twice. Billy Volek as well. I think Billy Volek was the QB then. Billy Volek, for a time, held the record, the NFL record for the most passing yards in 2 games. It was like 900 and something yards. It was,
you know who broke it?
It was
Ben
crazy.
Roethlisberger.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. He went for 550 and then 510 in back-to-back weeks with 6 touchdowns. Yeah. Anyhow, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah, so, less about Billy Volek. But Noah Brown, 239th pick of the 2017 draft. Sudden superstar for the Houston Texans. Jonas Gray Memorial Teaspoon winner, Week 10, 2023. Congrats to you. Ask Dare for instructions on how to polish the teaspoon. We'll now pivot, Tim, as you say, to the NFC side of the equation. Let's start with the East. In terms of win now versus transition, Eagles, Cowboys, both win now. Don't think much needs to be said on either of those 2 teams unless you had something. The Commanders are in 3rd position. I have them as a transition team, really on the basis of this is kind of a Sam Howell evaluation year. I know he's not a rookie, but he kind of is. Because he didn't play much last year at all. Only 1 start. They've been a defensive team. They're now kind of transitioning to being an offensive-led team. Sam Howell leads the NFL in passing yards, which is kind of crazy. But I don't know what your thoughts are on the Commanders. I have them in the transition bucket. Don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is difficult to put a team in win now mode who hasn't acquired a notable free agent, splashy free agent. I mean, they've done some things along the lines, but in ever, right? I mean, the Commanders are known, if nothing else, for the tagging Kirk Cousins 3 times in a row and making him incredibly overpaid for a long time. They don't go out and splash. So yeah, no, I would not call them win now. They're definitely in transition, but I feel like they have been forever. And at some point, you're sitting. We use these poker analogies today for whatever reason. You're sitting around the table and you've been folding, in the big blind all day. At some point, you got to play your pocket 7s. And, they're not kings, they're not queens, but if all you got all day is 7s, you got to play your 7s. And I think they have started doing that more. You've seen more success from them as an organization. I think you're seeing more attempts to maximize the talent they have on the roster today, as opposed to looking for how to acquire more all season long. And that's a shift for them as an organization. And I think it's a positive one.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well put. And I think the other thing with them is the Bieniemy hire, right? That is a transitional kind of thing to move you into being a slightly different type of team. So interesting to see how that goes forward. But yeah, Commanders in transition, but again, a feisty and competitive transitional team, and one where you think if Sam Howell continues to play as he is, you can be looking at win now next year, which I think is probably a reasonable expectation. The Giants, Tim, the most disappointing team in the NFL. It could be argued they're the worst team in football this year.
Could be.
Certainly will win now before the season began, having won a playoff game just a year ago, much as that seems impossible. They're 2-8. Danny Dimes is out for the season. Brian Daboll is on the hot seat. This is now officially transition time, but it's transition at the worst possible time because you've just paid your quarterback.
$40 million a year.
Just made that decision. He's out for the season. There is going to be some ill winds blowing through East Rutherford, New Jersey come the offseason, I think. I imagine Daboll probably manages to cling on, though that's no guarantee by any stretch.
All
The
depends on
team
what
is,
they do the rest of the go. If they
yeah,
end
the
up with
team
2
is
wins this
just
season, there's no way.
the team is just so bad.
Well, they're not putting an effort out there on Sundays. It's not like they're competitive. I mean, they just played a division game. And I don't care how bad you are. You know your division opponents. The AFC North is notorious for, it doesn't matter if you're 2-10 or 10-2. Those division games are supposed to be hard. And the Cowboys
They are.
they didn't have to show
Well,
up yesterday.
and they've beaten them twice as well. I mean, you can make obviously Tommy DeVito was not who you had envisioned starting, right?
No.
If you're a Giants fan before the season, you
that's
probably
true.
never heard of him. If he'd played well, by the way, that was Jonas Gray, locked and loaded,
All
but
over.
he did not.
Yeah.
He wasn't even the backup, right? Tyrod's on IR, short term, I think, but Danny Dimes is on IR. But the first game they got absolutely destroyed as well, and I think that's the thing. It's the manner of defeats. If you lose a bunch of close games and your quarterback gets injured, that's fine. But they won one game on a crazy comeback against the Cardinals, who you would have said preseason are the worst team in the league. And if you'd lost that, you'd be 1-9. I mean, it's ugly. It's ugly, and this is officially transition time for the Giants. I think we're both in agreement there. So
yes,
NFC North. Lions win now. I just find that a baffling statement to make, but they are.
Fun.
I mean, they're one of the best teams in the league. If you look at the win-loss record at 7-2,
they were in that building yesterday as well, and that's a team that is fun to watch. I don't know where the defense went yesterday. Giving up 38 points to the Chargers. Other people
without Mike Williams, Keenan Allen out for some of the game too.
Quentin Johnson looking really good though, by the way, I have to say. Quentin Johnston looking really good on the Chargers. But the Lions looked like a football team who I'm not trying to play these guys in January, just for what that's notable.
And I think, we've been singing the praises of the defense, so obviously they stank the joint out, but they could still, turns out, fall back on scoring 1 million points to win a game if they need to, which I think augurs well for them going forward, right? There's multiple ways for them to win. If the offense needs to go crazy, the offense can go crazy. So that's a nice thing to have in your back pocket if you're a Lions fan. Love the Lions. Good luck to them going forward. Dan Campbell done a hell of a job. And another team in that list of your offensive coordinator is going to leave in the offseason. So I'd start prepping interviews right now because Ben Johnson's not going to stay there much longer. The Vikings are second in this division at 6-4. I mean, incredible coaching job by Kevin O'Connell. Yeah. They would definitely win now because the Kirk Cousins contract just meant we kind of have to try and win with Kirk. Kirk O'Chains, as I believe he's named in the NFL commercial, which I do like. And then he gets injured and you think, oh, well, now it's time to transition away. We need to move on to the next guy, look at quarterbacks for the next draft. Josh Dobbs, Tim, has come in, played 2 games.
Pretty good.
And looked like Michael Vick or it's incredible how well he's played. There was all the rumors in the offseason that they would trade all the veterans and you kind of thought, yeah, we're playing out the string with Kirk and then we'll move on. Suddenly there's life in the building. Suddenly there's wins happening.
I picked them to win this division
win now.
And they're coming by. I'm telling you, it was a rough first 3 weeks. One win
behind the Lions, which is amazing.
But if you subtract their first 3 weeks, this team only lost 1 game. So, unfortunately, we talked about the Bengals getting off to a bad start. The Vikings got off to a worse one. But looking all the world like a playoff team today, win now for sure, given their quarterback situation. Less win now without him, but I love that at the trade deadline they went out and got somebody. And then that's why I keep them win now here. Going out and getting Dobbs rather than saying, man, we got what we got. So yeah, win now for sure, and good form.
I think the Jets must be looking at that going, why the hell did we not try and just send a rando pick to the Cardinals to acquire Josh Dobbs because we'd actually have a chance. Credit to Josh Dobbs.
It wouldn't have worked
amazing
for New York.
That's true.
There's a reason they're on the DFI.
That's very true. Credit to Josh Dobbs, one of our favorite stories, one of the NFL's favorite stories this year. Long may he continue. And the rare alumni of both the Steelers and the Titans. So good for old J Dobbs and his travails up there in the very cold part of the country of Minnesota. The last 2 teams in the NFC North, I had them both as transition teams, Packers, Bears. Packers, to quote Hadaway, are just trying to evaluate what is love. Baby, don't hurt me. Incredibly young receivers around him, post-Rodgers era. This is transition. If Love ends up being great, then you can just swoop straight into another Hall of Fame quarterback. But that's all the year's going to be. The Bears, it was a Fields evaluation year. Now it's a Tyson Bagent evaluation year. But no, both these teams have won 3 games. Both these teams are looking for the answer at quarterback, whether that's the guy on the roster or not. It's just
The only thing I'd say about these ones is, particularly in Chicago, trading away the number 1 pick last year because you felt like you had your quarterback kind of kept you in that, out of that transition bucket almost. But the rest of the team around him. If we talk about this win now from quality of the team versus win now from the strategy coming into the season, and I think they were more win now strategy wise, right? You go out, you get DJ Moore, you get some weapons for your young quarterback, you trade away the number 1 pick. It did not feel like a transition team, but it was a smart front office that said, if this is not the year, we're going to have a bunch of assets next year. You think about all the pieces they got in that trade. You think about the opportunity they're going to have to pick early and often in this draft. So a team that I would have said in the offseason was going win now, but with a hedge. And I think they're paying off that hedge now.
Yeah, big time. I mean, you've traded the first overall pick for a bunch of other picks, one of which is probably going to be the first overall pick this year. So that's pretty good.
Well done.
Although it may not be the same GM and coach making those decisions come the offseason, we shall see. But whoever is in that seat's in a great spot. I was going to go to the West and the South to follow the same pattern, but we can't finish with the NFC South because it's too depressing. So let's just do it now. The Saints
they're all in
now.
transition. No, stop it. They're all in transition.
No, they are. No, the Saints will win now, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
All right.
Because
this is the only one we're talking about from the whole division.
You got a veteran team.
Yeah.
Right. It's a pretty old roster. The Derek Carr acquisition and paying him.
Yep.
Is win now. There's no other way to put that. I mean, whether the quality of the team speaks to win now or not, this is the worst division in football. This is a team. Listen, I'm not saying the Saints are a good team because I don't think they are, but you got a coach who's been in situ for a little bit, Dennis Allen. You brought in Derek Carr, and the reason they're winning now, Tim, their salary cap next year is fucked. To use official language. So
we've been over it. We've been over it.
But if you're going to do that, you'll win now because no team that's trying to transition is screwing themselves so much. I mean, I can't remember the number, but there's something like 190 million over the cap next year already, and nothing's
even happened. And by June, we're all going to go, what cap? Caps don't matter.
Yeah.
I used to think myself a fairly decent cap guru. Cap doesn't matter.
But the point being,
matter.
To me, whether they do win now or not, it's win now. They've got a veteran team, veteran quarterback. They don't have a lot of young pieces. If you think about the star players, you give Cam Jordan, you think of even Kamara. I know Olave is obviously a great piece. Demario Davis is a veteran. Derek Carr is a veteran. The offensive line is all veterans. So their win right now, whether they do or not, it's a different kettle of fish. I had the Bucs and Falcons in Nowheresville. I think they're both in very similar positions. Not very likely that the quarterback is on the roster right now.
I think bringing a guy like Baker Mayfield puts you in transition by definition.
Yeah,
that's a caretaker role. You're looking for the next guy. Though Baker has played reasonably well, to his credit.
He has played quite well.
You don't go out and get somebody else's failed pride science project if you're trying to win the thing. You go out and do that because you need somebody in the seat until you can figure out who your next guy is. Atlanta obviously is tripping over itself in the quarterback department. Heineke, and now we're back to Ritter, and Ritter's not doing anything.
They just lost again, and Arthur Smith is completely pissed off the fan base. The only reason that the Falcons would even potentially consider themselves win now is because Arthur Smith, if they don't win now, is going to get canned. And I think the chances of him staying are fairly low as it is, regardless. But they're in Nowheresville. They need a new quarterback. They've got some pieces. If you're a Falcons fan, there's some exciting young pieces which you have spectacularly misused. So you hope the next guy can get a tune out of what should be on paper a pretty exciting offense. So we shall see.
Rookie quarterback, not doing it yet. Transition on to the West.
Yeah, yes, and Frank Reich is in some hot water, I would say. So
boiling.
Scorchio. NFC West 49ers win now. Nothing more to say on that, unless you wanted to say anything about San Francisco.
No, the only thing I'm going to say about San Francisco, I say no, and then I'm going to say something because that's what I do. Is I put them in the same bucket. I put New England, and I put them in the same bucket. I put Pittsburgh. Teams whose strategy, you can call it win now, you can call it transition, you can call it, there's 1,000 different things, the way you characterize these things and how you bucket them, but they're built for the long term, right? They will occasionally go out and make a splashy trade that they did for CMC, Trey Lance. I mean, they've done it a lot, but they always have assets. They're always working both sides of the thing. They're always building for now and 2 years from now. There's no F them picks. There's no trade them all for 1-year deals. There's no pay top of the market for players. They're trying to win now, but they're also trying to win every year for the next 20 years. And there are very few teams that walk that line very well, and I think the Niners are one of them. So,
yeah, for sure.
And the Titans trying to be in that same bucket, and that's what I was trying to say earlier. I think there's
Right.
several teams where you could almost put them in any bucket you wanted because they're always playing all of these strategies.
I see. No, I think that's an interesting point in the Niners. I mean, you think about them making the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, and that team, there's some pieces that are left. It wasn't that long ago, but you've also added quite a lot in the interim to try and say, right, let's roll this forward. John Lynch done a great job as the GM there. Interestingly, the second place team in this division, the Seahawks, who have won as many games as the San Francisco 49ers.
Very good at the transition period, which they were in for about a week and a half. Yeah. And they're like, we've traded away Russell Wilson. Whatever shall we do? Oh, I know.
Yeah,
we'll bring in Geno Smith.
We're paying a quarterback who's good. We're paying a quarterback who's not on our roster the most money of anyone on our roster, and then we're good already. They won again this weekend. The on-the-fly rebuild that they did, I don't know if there's ever been a more successful one in the history of football. They'll win now. They'll win now. What's really interesting with the roster is they're a great balance. When you actually step away from the the storyline of Geno and all the rest of it, veterans and youth, they've got a great blend. You look at the defense. You got Jordan Brooks. You got Bobby Wagner's come back. You got Jamal Adams. For whatever you think, he's a vet. He's been around. He's played at a high level at times. Then you've got guys like Tariq Woolen or Boye Mafe who are coming on and playing great. On offense, you've got vets like Tyler Lockett. You've got DK Metcalf. You've obviously got Geno. Then you've got Smith and Jigba. You've got Ken Walker. You've got young tackles that you've acquired. So they've actually got a really well-balanced roster in terms of experience and youth, which is great. And they're in a win now bucket. So credit to Tim, the oldest coach in the NFL, Pete Carroll. Don't know if
he's spry though. You'd never know it.
You'd never know. The Rams, third place. This was a team I didn't really know what to do with. I have them in the transition bucket as of today, primarily because Stafford being injured last year, you go, okay, he comes back. Sure, we've mortgaged a lot to try and win right now, which they did when they won the Super Bowl. But maybe Stafford comes back and they can go back to quick contention. Him getting injured again, and he's not the youngest, you got to start thinking about the next guy. And the next group may not include Sean McVay. He may step away and do the TV deal, which has been rumored. Aaron Donald may retire. Stafford may retire. And then you're into right, what the hell's going on? F them picks is in the rear view. Tim, they've got a first-round pick this year. The Rams.
Whoa, this year? Where do they get it from? They not their own?
No, they have their own. They tried to trade it for Brian Burns.
Really? I thought they were like 2029 or something, whether they got a draft pick.
No, they tried. They did their best. They did their best.
Good for them.
Good for them. But yeah, the Rams. I don't know what to make of them.
Draft pick. You know that? We McVay's first rounder. It's not a joke. He's never used a first round draft pick for them.
But yeah, I don't know what you make of the Rams. I found them a strange one to kind of evaluate. I have them in the transition bucket just because I think their hand's been forced. They probably would have liked to try and squeeze a little bit more juice out the lemon this year, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think there needs to be an appreciation for how bad this football team was last year with all the injuries. Everybody thought Cooper Kupp was going to come back week 1 and be healthy. He wasn't. He's back now. They found some shining objects in the young kids department while everybody was out hurt, and hopefully they can use that to transition. Tutu Atwell as well looked really good.
Kyron Williams.
Yeah, an opportunity to maybe parlay that into more win now. I'm not sure if I'm the Rams. Like, you went out and you got your quarterback Stafford and won a Super Bowl. You went out and you got all these other players who have now largely gone on. But if you believe you've got a couple or 3 wide receivers in Kupp, Atwell, and Puka, and you've got a running back in Williams, and you've got a quarterback in Stafford, you're built on that side of the ball to do all the things you're supposed to do. So it's a team that can get to win now relatively quickly, almost accidentally, in my view. I think they were trying to play for transition and kind of found some stuff, and they're like, oh, look what we've found here. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason.
Yeah, I have them circled as drafting a quarterback this year. whether it's for this year or for 2 years' time. Not because I think Stafford's taken a beating. I think it's you've got to be somewhat thinking. I mean, whether they do or not, I have them on the list because you can't rely on Matt Stafford to keep being Matt Stafford at age 35, 36, 37 with the injury history that he has
How old is
had.
Stafford?
35, I think now.
Okay.
He's been in the league
All
a
right.
long time. It's 2009 draft, I think.
Yeah.
So he's
Been
not
around.
getting any
Been
younger,
around.
and he's been hurt a lot. So
Yep,
I
for
think
sure.
it's time to at least consider the possibility you need to find the next guy, whether the next guy doesn't play for a couple of years or not.
Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona, no discussion needed. Transition team. Kyler came back. They won. Good for them. Team's terrible. Time to roll on 2024 draft. And
Figure out how to
off-season.
get rid of Kyler Murray.
So that puts us at the end of the list here. We've gone around all 32. And I think just to kind of pull it back to where we began.
Cap it. Yep.
We spoke about the kind of complaints of NFL watchers. And there's a lot of bad games. But if we take all of the teams we've agreed are in transition or Nowheresville, population a handful, that's 15 teams. So that's almost half the league, right? So 15 of 32 are in transition to some degree. And obviously, some of the win now teams, we've said, well, you have to be win now because the team is blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
So some of those teams you could probably put in the other bucket. You think of a team like the Jets where you think, okay, you'll win now, but you're not going to win anything right now. The Saints, similarly. The point being, if half the league is trying to move on to the next chapter, whether they're halfway through that, whether they're most of the way through that, whether they're just starting out, it's going to create a lot of these games where you go, really? I'm watching Jets Raiders? So we've had an NFL record 10 rookie quarterbacks start games this year. Scoring is down. And I think the main cause for that is a lot of teams are looking ahead rather than looking to today. So I don't know if you have any kind of final thoughts on that as we wrap this up. But when half the league's transitioning to something different, something new, something exciting, they hope, you're not going to get a lot of highly competitive football because a lot of teams don't care as much about the wins and loss department week on week.
Yep. No, I think you got it. I hope this is a relatively short-lived period for the NFL because you talk about the NFL as the league of parity and worst to first, and that only works if people up and down the spectrum are trying to win this season. I think, frankly, the career length of the average NFL player and injuries suggest you should always be trying to win this season. You just never know.
Yeah, and coaching tenure, right? You don't last too long there either.
No, and that's the way the NFL has always been. So I really hope that's not where we're at for the foreseeable future, but it's certainly where people are trying the analytic-y thing. How can I maximize my opportunity to win a particular year? There's people trying some things out there. I'd also note, I think there's an absolute just dearth of positional coaching talent out in the NFL right now. You see, in addition to whether or not the games are competitive, I really wonder if the quality of the football doesn't seem to be increasing at the rate it was 5 or 7 years ago. I mean, you just see some receivers who can't catch and quarterbacks who can't throw and offensive line certainly who can't cohesively block.
Offensive line, I think generally the offensive line play across the league is in as bad a state as I can remember it being.
And that makes it very hard for offenses to score points. It doesn't matter how good your skill position players are if your quarterback's running for his life. So certainly that's another podcast. There's another opportunity for that, and we'll bring that one to you. But until we do, please do check us out on the social media at Half Yard Line Pod on the things, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com. If you want to email us, we will get back to you. Would love to interact on social media. Like, rate, subscribe, rate, review, all the things you can do on the social medias. If you want, leave a comment, start a conversation. We got a couple of good comments out there. Appreciate people posting, starting conversations on the threads there. All of that stuff works really well for us in the algorithms of the internet attention span. So check us out. We put this up every week. We got some shorts that fall out every week. So follow us, see those on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever your favorite app is. And while you guys do that this week, we'll be looking for more fun content to talk with you about next week. And until then, we'd encourage you to be good.
Ciao.
Bye.